Come rain or shine, Formula One goes racing at some of the toughest tracks around the world. When conditions are pristine and the mercury rises, teams must contend with overheating engines and tyres that grain as the track temperature soars. But when the conditions deteriorate and the rain starts falling, racing can become much more treacherous. In the first half of the 2025 season, there have been 2 F1 races hit with rain, the season opener in Melbourne and the British Grand Prix. In both instances, mixed up weather led to mixed up results. But just what happens when the rain falls on an F1 race? Some of the most dramatic Grand Prix in F1 history have been in the rain. Canada 2011 was a crazy wet race that saw Jenson Button make 6 stops and average just 46 miles an hour, or 74 kilometers an hour, on his way to winning the race. The Portuguese Grand Prix of 1985 was another memorable wet race, as it delivered Ayrton Senna his first F1 race win while the rain thundered down. But then there are races when the rain spoils the fun, like Belgium 2021, where so much rain fell at Spa-Francorchamps that the race was called off after just a handful of laps behind the safety car. It was without doubt the right call for safety reasons, but it's not the way anyone wants their race weekend to end. Thankfully, races being called off in the wet isn't all too common, as F1 has developed a few tools to help it keep running when the rain pours. First, there are the tyres that teams can use over a race weekend. Slick tyres from Pirelli are designed for smooth, dry tarmac and have a pristine surface that can be caught out by the slightest slick of moisture on a racetrack. When the rain falls, F1 instead turns to its 2 wet compounds from Pirelli, the intermediate and the full wet tyre. Each of these tyres is designed to displace a lot of water. They need to do this to help the circuit dry out so that teams can get back up to full speed as quickly as possible. To help clear the track, the tyres have a pattern of grooves cut into the surface that aids grip and helps clear standing water from the surface of a track. The movement of these grooves, or tread blocks, is also what helps these tyres generate grip during a race. The tread blocks deform elastically and convert that expanded energy into heat. The tread blocks themselves also attempt to cut through the surface of the water on track, and the shape of the tread brings that surface water with it and throws it out of the way, largely up into the air behind an F1 car. This is otherwise known as spray, and we'll come back to that in a moment. Of the 2 wet compounds that Pirelli offers, the intermediate is the favoured tyre and can displace 30 litres of water per second per tyre at 300 kilometers an hour. There are fewer grooves on the surface of the intermediate tyre compared with the full wet, meaning it can be easier to control the temperatures in a race, although the tyre still needs to be very soft to generate temperature in wet conditions. The full wet, however, can displace a whopping 85 litres of water per second per tyre at 300 kilometers an hour. But when the race requires that much water to be displaced from the track, it is usually red flagged as the spray created by the passing cars dramatically reduces visibility. And this is the biggest issue with F1's wet weather tyres. They create an awful lot of spray that blocks the visibility for other drivers. So how do you fix this visibility problem? Over the past 2 years, the FIA has tested what it termed as a wet weather package. Essentially, this was spray guards fitted to the wheels of an F1 car to mitigate the vertical motion of the spray. In 2023, Mercedes trialled a spray guard fitted to the rear of the wheels, which sat low down in a bid to mitigate the water that was being thrown up. However, after a round of tests, it was found that this offered very little change. Ferrari then tried much larger wheel guards in 2024, with one set covering almost the whole wheel and another set with spoke-like holes at the sides to assess the impact this had. However, these again did not offer an overwhelming difference to the spray, and actually may have developed further issues with tyre overheating. Given that much of the spray in current F1 cars is produced by the suction of the floor, the FIA is hoping that smaller diffusers in 2026 may mitigate some of this effect. Until then, Formula One often turns to the safety car when heavy rain falls. With the cars running behind the safety car, the wet weather tyres can still work to clear a dry racing line, but the lower speeds on track can make conditions less treacherous for the drivers. If the track is still too dangerous for the drivers, then the race can be red flagged due to the rain and the event will be paused. For each race, F1 gives itself a 3-hour window in which to run the Grand Prix, and if the clock winds down before the final lap has run, then the number of points dished out at the end of a race is reduced. All of these rules and regulations around wet weather don't mean that F1 wraps its drivers in cotton wool whenever the rain falls. Instead, The chaos of rain on track can effectively neutralise the field or let drivers who may not normally have a chance shine. At Silverstone this year, while McLaren still dominated the race and walked away with an easy 1-2, the rest of the pack was much more mixed up by the changing conditions and strategies through the race. Nico Hülkenberg was helped to his first ever F1 podium by Sauber's tight calls, and a gamble from Aston Martin's Lance Stroll meant that for a significant portion of the race he was running in the podium places. Then there are the drivers who excel in the wet. Stroll got his one and only F1 pole position on a wet track in Turkey, and Ferrari's Lewis Hamilton has always been an ace in the rain. Ayrton Senna was another icon of the sport who excelled in the wet, with the Brazilian's wins in Portugal and a wet 1993 European Grand Prix earning him the nickname the Rainmaster. And Jenson Button was another racer who was formidable when the conditions degraded, with his feel for the tyres and his composed approach to racing helping him win wet races in Canada and Hungary. And in case you're curious, here are the rankings for the most wet weather Grand Prix wins. And as of the 2025 British Grand Prix, there have been 158 rain-affected races in total. Rain also mixed up the results at races like the 2003 Brazilian Grand Prix, where the chaotic race was packed with incidents and retirements, ultimately leading to a surprise win for Giancarlo Fisichella, his first of 3 F1 race wins. More recently, the 2021 Hungarian Grand Prix was a perfect example of how mixed conditions can shake up the result, as Alpine's Esteban Ocon wowed the field to take his one and only race win ahead of a charging Lewis Hamilton. It's because of races like this that F1 fans always get excited when the skies darken over a racetrack. And thanks to wet tyres and advances in safety tech, F1 can still put on a show whenever the rain falls.